Welcome to On the Spot with Barney and Giz. This is Giz, and once again, Barney is still in Europe. So I've invited Vish back for part 2. I feel like we could be speaking for hours and hours, but instead we'll speak for another 30 to 45. Just so people can still listen and maintain some interest.
Don't get too bored, eh? Yeah.
How you going, brother? You happy for round 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So last time we talked a lot about financial freedom, compounding, delayed gratification, conscious spending. The list goes on. I found it very enjoyable.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a good chat. Always love talking in depth about finances and.
Love it. Well, let's continue that trend.
Yeah.
But with a slightly different twist. There's a lot of things that bring me joy. One of these things is to tap into what makes people passionate, or what people are passionate about, and then asking about them. Because, people often ask, things like, how are you? Or
right.
How are the kids? Like, let's be honest, no one cares. So, and especially how are you I think it's almost a useless question now. But once you find out what people are passionate about, you see their eyes light up. And V2's eyes light up when we talk about cryptocurrency. So let's have a chat about that, brother. So I guess firstly for the absolute novices like myself and perhaps some of the other listeners, shout out to Shanika.
Yeah.
What is cryptocurrency and what is Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. And it was the first cryptocurrency that came to existence.
OG.
OG, number one. So Bitcoin was sort of an experiment that came about after, many years of work by cryptographers. And what they were trying to solve was the problem of digital money. So the internet came about, and we've had the internet, most of us since the 1990s. But one of the biggest flaws with the internet was, even though you could send information freely and in a decentralized manner, there was no real way to attach value to the data that you sent. And I guess the main reason why that was because either you needed a central authority that would keep track of other people's accounts and how much they're spending, if they're able to spend it. And I guess the other side of that is, as with anything digital, it can be copied. So with that, you have the problem of people trying to spend twice what they have. So you have the double spending problem.
Or triple.
Yeah, infinite spending.
Yes.
So that's the problem that was plaguing cryptographers and computer scientists for many years, and Bitcoin was the first one that solved it. So Bitcoin was released as a white paper back in...
Can I just summarize as we go, just to make sure I'm on the same page?
Yeah.
So essentially, crypto is the idea that you can put value to digital data.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, and as almost like a currency.
Yeah. 100%. So the currency in cryptocurrency is a bit of a misnomer because it's not just currency. It can actually form other use cases, but we might get to that later.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, as I was saying, was released as a white paper by this guy or girl or group of people called Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't really know the identity of that person.
So reading about this.
Yeah, so you might have heard of his name, Satoshi. And so he sold...
So no one knows who this person is?
No one. So
that's
people have...
crazy.
I know. So
that's so crazy.
There's this whole mystery about how Bitcoin came to be.
Do we know if he or she is alive?
Obviously, they were alive because they were communicating with other developers, So even though he was the one who released this white paper, he still recruited the help of other developers in order to check his work and develop the end product, Bitcoin.
What do you mean by white paper, sorry?
So white paper is like a technical document that outlays how you're going to accomplish a certain project or goal.
I see.
So in this case, it was like a 9-page document, and it outlined how Bitcoin should function and how to go about it, essentially.
Right.
And I guess one thing to add is that it's before the actual product has been made, so it's just a
like an MVP, like a minimum viable
sort of,
product.
Yeah, I would say it's even before the MVP. So it's just a proposal as to how things can be.
Sure. So I'm gonna keep summarizing, man. Otherwise, I might not understand what's to come. So the white paper is like, it's like a rule book for Bitcoin, or more broadly cryptocurrency.
That's right.
Yeah. So how we normally deal with money, there's certain rules. So these guys have outlined their rules for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect.
So
continue.
So Bitcoin, what the problem that it solved is the double spending problem, and also another sort of esoteric computer science problem called the Byzantine generals problem. And I'll probably butcher this story along with everything else that I say today. But so this problem essentially dates back to before modern warfare, in times where you had radio communication. So there would be a castle that a bunch of army generals are trying to hold siege and then attack, and each general is waiting for the signal to attack, and they don't want to attack before another army attacks. They want to attack all at the same time together, because that's when they're the strongest. But in order to do this, what they have to do is send out riders on horseback to pass word to each of the generals. And so with that comes a sort of a deficiency in terms of how much trust you can place in the rider in terms of what they're telling you. So you have to trust
Chinese whispers.
Yeah, that's it. So Chinese whispers essentially is what happens. And so what Bitcoin does is it tries to remove trust. So you don't have to trust anyone. You just have to trust, I don't know if you have to trust the system.
Yeah.
So you don't have to trust humans, but you just trust the mathematics.
Sure.
So the mathematics is outlined in the Bitcoin white paper, and it allows us to, in decentralized fashion, be able to transfer value across the internet and know without any third party, without any middlemen. So that is the immense value that Bitcoin has brought about that didn't previously exist. So currently, in this world when we want to send money, we have to use a bank, or if we're doing it online, we might use PayPal. But the bank and PayPal, they're central authorities that you have to trust with your money. So in order to send money from Australia to, your cousins in Sri Lanka, you have to trust some third party in order to take your AUD and, transfer it over into Sri Lankan rupees. But with Bitcoin, you're in complete control of your funds, and the network is decentralized and open to anyone. It's permissionless. You don't need, and it's censorship resistant. So all these terms, what they essentially mean is that the network is open to anyone. It's not controlled by any one person or body or company. And what that means in practical terms is that if I want to send money to my cousin in Sri Lanka, I can do that whenever I want. In the matter of a few minutes, my money would be in my Sri Lankan cousin's wallet, and there would have been no...
Metaphorically.
Yes, well, yeah, I guess that's another... I mean, there are wallets. It's a digital wallet.
Oh, interesting. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so there's no middleman taking off a fee, or, you know, that you have to beg for permission in order to use the network.
So essentially, instead of having one of these big banks or PayPal as you described, it's all regulated by whatever's on this white paper, or whatever the fundamental guidelines are of crypto.
Right. Well, I mean, so
right?
It started off from the white paper, but now it's been translated into actual code.
Sure.
So it's actually a computer program, essentially running on many thousands of computers, maybe even more now, but many thousands of computers. This code is running, and that essentially forms the Bitcoin network. So Bitcoin is both a currency, I guess, and a protocol. So the protocol, it's a protocol that enables a payment network, and is also a currency. So the network itself is run by various players. So, but anyone is open and free to be a part of the network. So you might have heard the term miners, or mining Bitcoin.
People mining for Bitcoin.
So what they do is essentially they have these... So in order to validate the transactions on the network and ensure that, you know, people aren't spending twice what they have, and just in order to keep a ledger of people's accounts, these miners essentially they solve a problem in order to validate the transactions that are going on in the network. So people send transactions. So say I'm sending money to my cousin in Sri Lanka. So that transaction needs to be validated, because if it's not validated, then, you know, I could just send how many of a Bitcoin infinite times, right? So someone has to validate it. So that's what the miners are doing. So they're solving this problem in order to validate these transactions. And in return for supplying their electricity and computing power, they get a reward. And so that reward currently is, I think, 6.5 Bitcoin, but it started off as 50 Bitcoin. And so there's... so like I said, I said I would butcher things. I should take a step back and say that the main... So this network that we're talking about, this protocol, what it's called is blockchain. So you might have heard of blockchain. So blockchain is essentially another way of... Well, they call it triple accounting. Triple ledger accounting, I believe. So currently we have double ledger accounting, or where we have the debit and credit.
Friends.
But blockchain allows us to essentially... So blockchain, what it is each block has a bunch of transactions that have occurred. And so what the miners are doing is they take a bunch of transactions that are waiting to be validated, and they try and put it into a block. And they have to solve a certain problem such that this block gets added on to the existing chain. And so over time, you have these blocks of transactions added to the blockchain, and that blockchain is immutable, which means it can't be changed. Nothing can be erased. Whatever's there is there. So a transaction that occurred, 10 blocks previously, you would have to, because each of the blocks are linked through very complex mathematics, it would require a lot of computing power in order to actually change something within the blockchain. So say, I'm trying to be sneaky and I'm trying to change a previous transaction of mine, maybe cancel it. Well, that may be theoretically possible, but I would need a lot of computing power in order to undo all of the work of the previous blocks in order to get to that transaction and change it. And the reason why these blocks, the reason why the blockchain is immutable is because the problem that the miners are solving is that each block so in order for the transactions to be included into a block, the miners are solving this problem, this mathematical problem, using their computers. And the computers are essentially doing a trial and error thing. So that's why the more computing power they have, the more likely they're going to solve
trialing algorithms.
Exactly. So really they're just trying to find a number that suits that will suit this particular mathematical formula. So they're trialing all these different numbers, and once they find that number, they can add that block to the blockchain. And so, as a reward for supplying all that electricity and computing power, they get Bitcoin, and also at the same time, your transactions as a user of that network are validated.
I see. So these miners, I mean, anyone can mine, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
As far as I know. So if there were no miners, what would happen to Bitcoin? So I mean, none of these transactions would be.
Yeah, I mean, you need miners in order to validate the transactions. So if there weren't any miners, then I guess the network wouldn't have any value. So I guess that ties into a concept called the network effect, or it's otherwise known as the Metcalfe law. And essentially, a network is only as valuable as the number of people that are using it. So say we have the internet and we're back in 1970 or whatever, whenever it was invented, and there's just me and you at our various universities using it. Well, that's not as valuable as like that internet, the value of that network. Well, it's only valuable to me and you. Say we add a third person in, well then you can communicate to the third guy, I can communicate to him, and then so on and so forth. And so as you grow with numbers, the value of that network actually grows exponentially, because the number of connections that you can have grows exponentially.
I see.
So the value of the network actually grows at the same time. So another example is the telephone. So if there were only 2 people in the world that had a telephone, I mean, that's fine, but it only becomes more valuable as a technology once a critical mass of people are using it.
Sure. So in terms of saying that you don't need to trust, you don't need to put your trust in any sort of body to manage your money, whatever that means, which we'll get to eventually. It seems, is there a certain level of trust in that you need that network effect, and if you lose it, then everything sort of gets compromised? Or have I missed?
So I brought up the term network effect to essentially imply that the value of the network is only as valuable as the number of people that are using it. So if there weren't any miners, then the network wouldn't actually be valuable at all.
Sure.
So there will always, now that Bitcoin has been bootstrapped and it's got a certain amount of value attached to it, there will always be people who are willing to put in their computing power and electricity in order to get that reward when they validate transactions, because Bitcoin to them is valuable.
Sure. So
when Bitcoin first started, I think the network kicked off in 2009 on January 3rd. Everyone everyone would have had the computing power and electricity to supply in order to validate transactions. It's only now that because the competition because the competition to become a miner has increased, you need higher levels of computing power and electricity. So naturally that's led to centralization of vast data centers, essentially, with these massive amounts of computing power and cheap electricity.
Right.
So
not everyone can mine.
I mean, you are free to mine, and you can add your your PC CPU to a mining pool, but you might only get a few cents or dollars every day or something like that. But initially, you would get 50 Bitcoin each time you validated a block. And because there were only a few miners or people on the network, you were probably highly likely to validate a block. So you would get that 50 Bitcoin. And Bitcoin at the time was maybe worth, well, at the start, I'm not sure how much it was worth. Maybe zero, maybe 1 cent.
Less than what it is worth now. Let's put it that way.
But I think it started off as a few cents. But for a few cents, it wouldn't cost you that much to run your computer and pay the electricity in order to validate those transactions. But over time, as more people wanted Bitcoin and wanted to use it, well, the price of it rose, and so more people are willing to actually come in and supply their computing power and electricity to validate the network, because they hope to get that reward of Bitcoin.
And
I just want to finish on this, is that Bitcoin is actually a very well designed system in that every stakeholder in the Bitcoin network, their incentives are perfectly aligned. So everyone can act in their own self-interest, but in acting in their own self-interest, they also increase the value of the network for all that participate in the Bitcoin network.
I like that. That's nice. Is there, if someone wanted to start mining for Bitcoin, is there a rule book or something on how to do it, or is there a program or software that you download, and how does that work?
So Bitcoin, its software is all open source. So what that means is it's hosted openly on the internet, and anyone can download it and review it and whatnot. And so they'll have a mining program, I guess, which you can run on your PC. As long as you have enough computing power, then you might have a fair chance of validating some blocks and getting rewarded with the Bitcoin reward that comes with validating each block. And also I haven't mentioned this yet, but there is also a transaction fee that you pay for each transaction, and that is to actually reward the miner for doing the work.
Oh, right.
So the miners get both the the default reward, block reward, and also the transaction fees when they validate the transactions.
So you don't necessarily have to be an IT guru to start mining, or you do?
You don't, but at this stage, if you're looking to get into mining, it's probably that ship has sailed, because you really do need these. So they've moved past the stage where you can just use your standard home PC to where you actually need to use it's called an application specific integrated circuit or computer. So these very specialized computers that are fine-tuned to mining Bitcoin. So they're not like any standard computer. They use chips that actually optimize in order to...
I was just going to use my iPhone 5. I can't do that.
You're free to do that, but I'm not sure if you'll find any value. Sure.
Interesting. So that's That's very interesting. So I guess to get into Bitcoin, you have to start with your own money. Is that right? To buy
Yeah.
Bitcoin?
So at the moment, I guess there are various ways to go about getting Bitcoin, and I guess it's similar to getting money in general. But at the moment, yeah. So you would have to go on an exchange and swap your Australian dollars or whatever it is to. And so you're actually selling your Australian dollars and buying Bitcoin off someone else.
But it's not a stock, right? It's like another form of currency. How would you yeah?
It's completely a new asset class. So it is really a revolutionary thing. Like it is a once in a lifetime, maybe once in a species type deal. In that way, creating a completely new asset class. So it is not a stock, and yes, you could describe it as a currency. Could also be described as a commodity. But yeah, maybe trying to apply those old school labels to it is maybe doing it a disservice, because it is also much more than that, I guess.
Ooh, so what does it mean to you? What does crypto or Bitcoin mean to you?
Yeah, I guess Bitcoin and crypto. So yeah, maybe we should talk about that for a bit. At the moment, there are maybe thousands of cryptocurrencies that have built off.
I didn't know there was that many. I knew there was a lot, but that's...
Yeah, so...
and since 2009, January 3rd.
Yeah, that's right. So Bitcoin has been around for 10 plus years now. So in recent years, I guess Bitcoin has gone through bubbles and busts, and there's been crazes, and there was one particular craze, I guess, in 2017, and that's when a lot of these new cryptocurrencies came about. There were still some other cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin before that, but that's when it really sort of popped, and that's when you saw the flourishing. Now we have, I think, if you go on one particular site, there will be maybe 2,800 different cryptocurrencies listed.
Amazing.
Yeah. So they all try and do different things, although I guess most of them I guess are trying to usurp Bitcoin as the number one. But the reason why Bitcoin is so strong is that obviously it's been around the longest, but it's also withstood the test of time. People have tried to hack the network, try and corrupt the code base, or just generally attack the network. And yet Bitcoin has gone from strength to strength and has managed to hold off those attacks and be resilient. So no one has run off with, Bitcoin that they shouldn't have earned through hacking the network. They have run off with Bitcoin that didn't belong to them, but they've only sort of stolen that from other people who have held the Bitcoin, but they haven't actually attacked the network in order to get at the Bitcoin. So Bitcoin network itself is actually quite resilient.
So you're saying that's the equivalent of if you have your money in your bank, they didn't steal it from the bank.
Right.
They robbed the guy on the street.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
A very simplistic way of understanding that. Okay. So what is money then, and what, if you're blowing my mind, my friend. So what is money, and what is crypto, and what gives these things value?
Yeah, I mean, those are the big questions that I guess most people don't ask themselves. They're just happy to use their money as it comes to them. But there are a weird bunch of us who ask these questions and question what is money. I guess it's a whole science and history, and I would probably as with everything else, butcher this as well. But um, money, I guess, has a few aspects to it. So one of them is a medium of exchange. So we can hold a transaction and agree to exchange value using money. So back in the day, we used to exchange value through a system of barter. So I would have one good and you would have another good.
I think it used to be salt back in the day. Salt was used as a currency.
Yeah, that's right. Like throughout
which makes
history.
you question who gives value to what, and sorry, continue.
Right. So throughout history, we've had many different forms of currency. So yeah, like you said, salt was one, shells, obviously gold. But yeah, these are all currencies that we can use in order to exchange value. So even before we had currency, we used to use a system of barter, or at least that's what historians tell us, is that say I had goats, you had cotton, we would trade my goat for a bunch of your cotton. But the problem with that scenario is that there's inefficiencies and discrepancies in what you actually desire and what I have. So even though I have a goat to offer,
I need a cow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So what currency does is that it levels the playing field so that it's sort of agnostic. So you can take your currency and go get a cow for yourself. And you don't have to offer the other person cotton. Maybe they don't want cotton. So they're happy to accept currency. And so that's what it means to have a currency as a medium of exchange. There are other properties as well, such as having a store of value. So you need some reasonable faith in that your currency is going to store value over time, over a period of time. Obviously, with inflation, you can't really have that.
Yeah, but people do.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, I can't put any negativity on that. I mean, I still do that, but it's a work in progress, but it's scary to think about.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that Bitcoin is trying to attack or overcome is this inflationary model where the value of your currency reduces every year just because the central banks, this centralized body, is printing a lot of money. So they're flooding the market with a lot of currency, and then the value of your currency in your
goes down.
Savings account, goes down. So store of value is one. Medium of exchange. I'm drawing on a blank. So,
That's fine. I think, we've gone through a lot, man. That was great. Yeah. There's definitely a few things that admittedly went over my head, but that's nothing to do with you. That's more me not knowing too much about the topic yet. But it sounds, I feel like you could talk about this for many a day.
Yes, 100%.
Which is great. And I mean, just a quick shout out to Shez. There's 2 podcasts in our group. Only one's ever had a audience, but that's one thing just to point out. But let's call it for today, Vish. But I just want to again acknowledge you. I think, can I ask you a question before I acknowledge you? How many hours do you think you've spent researching and learning about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Well, there was a period...
And for how long? Over how long?
Okay, sure. So I think I first got introduced, or first delved into it maybe early 2016. And there was a period where I wasn't doing much at work in 2017.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, cryptocurrency, the space was...
blowing up.
Is blowing up, yeah. And I spent a lot of hours at work researching it. So I really don't know, maybe 1,000+ hours.
Amazing. And I think it shows. So over 3 to 4 years, maybe 1,000+ hours. That's crazy. And I think that's this is on the side as well. You're still holding a full-time job, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You got your own life thing going on. So I really respect that. I think that's so cool, and I aspire to do those sort of things. Not necessarily for Bitcoin, but
Sure.
in some other aspect of my life.
Yeah.
So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.